So last week we started with the best board games ever, but now comes the bigger challenge, finding and naming the worst. Some on this list may surprise you, some may even be a favorite of yours, but remember, this is only my opinion on the subject, not some ultra-definitive list. So which board games make like a powerful vacuum cleaner? What games do we not want to play at all after a while? What games are the worst to make it through? This one may be a little intense, so grab an airsick bag, sit back, relax, and let's get started. A Stack the Block game that has had its day in the spotlight, Jenga first came to our attention in the 1990s with the relentless commercials that tell how it's supposed to be played. But it can be easy to tell which blocks go where. There's a major downside to this game, one that the manufacturers never told in any of the commercials or any of the future versions. When the tower of blocks falls over, if you're wanting to play again or simply put it away, someone has to rebuild the tower from the ground up. There is a house rule that says the loser has to do this, but what about the others that are patiently waiting to start playing again? So it becomes a matter of time before someone decides they have had enough and put it away, sometimes never to be brought out again. But it gets more interesting that there is a Super Jenga, as well as all the other big ones, one that has slanted blocks. Why do I say interesting? Because of the slant, it has to be taken out and put away by shifting the blocks around and building it anyway. In other words, you have to build the tower for the first round before you begin to actually play. So yes, it hardly sees the light of day anymore, and for a very good reason. First of all, notice please that I didn't save the previous version. When the game first came out, going through the opening circle was a matter of choice. Whether you ended up with a nice job for life or ended up with a job the equivalent of flipping burgers, it was by your own choice. And then they decided to, quote, simplify, close quote, it. You drew from a pack of cards, your job as well as how much you got paid, and that's where it gets ridiculous. In the earlier version, the game actually reflected the reality that studying, learning new things, and progressing on afterwards was an accurate analogy of life. Those younger players would get the idea that they should progress via that method and make it to the end where their life would reward them openly. In the later version, however, is simply a luck of the draw. It doesn't matter the career card, not the slightest. It matters the pay amount you get, and that's where the silly begins. You could be a doctor or a rock star and get paid one of the lower payday cards, or you could be a trash collector and get paid the highest reward. In other words, it doesn't enforce the idea of the need for education anymore. It's a pure luck and random chance that has a person believing it doesn't matter the job they get, only that they get paid the most. I'm not sure if it's still out like that. You may have to look it up and research the facts of the game on your own, but it is likely a part of the stack of box games that are never brought out. I think it's pretty obvious that I prefer games of strategy and logic over games of chance. The reason why is because my brain is simply wired that way, but it's something others can pick up as well. So is it any wonder I put a game on this list where a simple hand tremor can result in the loss of a game? It is, again, a luck of the draw as to which troubling operation needs to be taken to remove what is, essentially, a pun. Don't get me wrong, I think the pieces are slightly amusing, if you can tell from our love of puns, but that irritating buzz is what means the difference between success and failure. It's not a game of logic or any particular skill except having a steady hand, yet the manufacturer's marketing keeps putting it out year after year without anyone suspecting a thing. You'd think a game like this would be a favorite of a writer like me, but for some reason it isn't anywhere close. And I can tell you the reason. As it turns out, it takes a lot more luck than either the player who is trying to get the word mentioned is good enough or the player with the buzzer isn't paying attention in order to really get the word out there. For me, I try to carefully craft the words I want to say. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's not without a lot of consideration and editing. Just as one example, for this particular one, I tried to decide on what else could go in this number before finally deciding I needed to put Taboo in the spot.
My writing process doesn't change. It has served me well, but this is just not my type of game. If you look at the previous top 5, it's clear what kind of game I do prefer. Game of strategy and thinking, as I mentioned before. And one particular kind of game would be put on here that I love to play, although it's not technically a board game: pool. Did you know it's actually a game defined by math and physics? But I digress. I think the biggest irritation with Taboo, above all else, is that irritating buzzer. I mean, I get it if someone uses it to pretend it's an electric shaver. It was funny the first time, not even close now. So which board game surpasses all the others in sheer badness? Which game would I recommend most of all to never play? Which so-called game is it that sinks lower than all the others? You know, I try my best to not say what I believe is the right way to go. I have my own beliefs when it comes to religion or politics, but there are already way too many videos that speak on the subject, most of them saying that it has to be the way they believe. I try not to force my beliefs on others. They can ask if they're curious, and I will share it with that person. I have nothing to hide, but I don't believe this is the forum to let people know what my opinions are. I don't hide it so much on my Facebook, but that's another story. For this one, though, I have to urge people to never try this so-called game. Usually associated with a cult and spiritual thing, the Ouija board is thought to allow someone to speak to the dead. I'm not sure exactly how it's supposed to work, never having or ever going to play it, but all you really need to do is to look up Ouija board stories on YouTube, and you can get a deeper understanding of why I don't think I will ever have one in my home, or if somewhere else I will ever join in. But what really gets to me is the fact that although some can make their own boards and their own markers, I believe it was Parker Brothers that decided they had to get it out there to the masses. Frankly, it is a real game of chance, one with too high a stake, where you can either contact a departed loved one or make contact with a darker sort of spirit that only pretends. Why would anyone ever try to do this? And this from someone who was widowed February of last year. I know there are those who say that it's okay to use it to try and talk to my sweetest angel of a wife, but how would I know for sure if it was her or something darker pretending to be her? On the other hand, there are those who claim it's harmless, but think on this. A box of matches is relatively harmless. Simple sticks of wood with a compound on one end that lights up when it friction. But at the same time, if someone starts lighting them and playing with them, it can still burn down a house. A steak knife is relatively harmless until someone decides they want to try and juggle it. But the Ouija board is far more likely to have longer lasting effects. Take this. If you were to let a complete stranger into your home without knowing if this person was simply someone who was in need or someone who's more likely to kill you, would you take that chance? So, while I can say the other games are simply ridiculous, but you can play them if you want to, I have to strongly recommend never getting or making one of these things, just like you should never take the chance. So that's it. I know I ended on a deep note, but I am serious about it. As usual, I ask that you like it and subscribe, but I leave the comments open with these two questions. First, what is the worst game you know that's not on this list? Second, even though I warned against it, would you ever consider anything like the last one? Leave your answers in the comments, and I'll see y'all next time. Ouija, really?